What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 30th, 2021, getting almost to the end of the month here, and we have a lot to talk about today. A lot of news has been going on there. So what we're going to do, like we normally do, 1 hour of news, then we're going to open up the phone lines for your comments, questions, and observations. Mike is in our control room twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, so let's get right on into it. Interesting little article. This came on out of Cuz Blue, and it's talking about this European individual who has basically come on out saying that Joe Biden's cognitive decline is very obvious and he's really incapable of being president of the United States of America, which is no surprise to anybody who listens to this program here. But obviously Europe is being a lot more honest about what they're seeing than the American corporate media is. And a lot of people are focusing on Joe Biden's embarrassing press conference where he had all these little notes to look at. Even Saturday Night Live was poking fun at all the little crib notes that he was trying to use for that. And clearly the administration and the American corporate media are in a state of denial as to what's going on. But if you remember that story that we ran yesterday, apparently Biden is on the phone with former President Barack Obama nearly every day, and the indications are that Barack Obama is basically telling Biden what to do, and so we're actually in the Obama presidency third term, so that's going to be kind of interesting. Another little story, this one came out of Russia Today, saying that for Trump to stay relevant, he's got to stop obsessing about the past, meaning his, losing a stolen election, and he's got to focus on Joe Biden's screw-ups today because there are and will be plenty of them. And Trump's attitude since he left the White House, it's clear he's going to stay in politics. But if he is serious about regaining the presidency in 2024, he needs to ensure his attacks on Biden are more carefully considered and a lot more visible. Now, to that end, Trump has started the first website. It's 45office.com, I think it is. It's the official website of the former president. And right now they're just taking comments. There's very little content, but I imagine that's going to change in the very near future. But you can leave a comment directed either at Donald Trump or at Melania. And so if you feel like sending a message to them, somebody somewhere is going to read it. I want to talk about the MyPillow. We had a relative actually give us a couple of those over the weekend. Little thicker than I like, but nice pillows here. And now we're hearing that Mike Lindell, who's the CEO of MyPillow, is saying Trump could be back in office this coming August because this whole election fraud is coming apart. He was on Steve Bannon's show saying that it's really coming apart at the seams. Now, right now, Lindell is caught up in a $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit filed by Dominion Voting Systems Incorporated, and this could blow back on them big time because if it actually goes to court, Lindell is going to be allowed to present the evidence of fraud by Dominion in a court of law. Now, to date, every single court that has been approached about looking at this situation, they ducked the issue. They evaded. Even the United States Supreme Court, Justices Hear No Evil, Justice See No Evil, and Chief Justice Speak No Evil, they resort to legal technicalities like no standing to avoid the issue. And so, in point of fact, the massive amount of evidence of election fraud from last November has never had its day in court. and there are people still out there working, they're auditing, they're double checking, and they're continuing to find more evidence of fraud, duplicate ballots, overcounting, all kinds of things like that. And if that were to blow up, if Dominion takes Lindell into court, it is going to open up a real can of worms, and it will take a much, much bigger can to recan them. Now, the same thing applies to Donald Trump himself, because Dominion Voting Systems is suing Donald Trump for spreading election fraud claims about the 2020 elections. But again, if Dominion actually goes through with it and takes it into court, the courts are going to have to allow Donald Trump to defend himself by saying, here's the evidence that would lead any reasonable human being to conclude that something was very hinky about the election. Let's face it, if they go into court and the judge says, I refuse to hear any evidence, and Dominion wins, that, I think, is basically going to blow the lid off just as effectively as the evidence will, because it's going to be too obvious that the entire governmental system is terrified out of their mind that this secret is not being kept. Story coming on out of Russia Today again. It's called Manufacturing Kamala. And they're saying that this recent directive that went out to refer to the Biden-Harris administration is another step along toward putting Kamala Harris in the Oval Office, and Biden will be stepping down either for the 25th Amendment. He could be impeached for some illegal activities that he's done. The problem is getting Biden out and Harris in, again, without risking exposure of the massive election fraud, because I think a lot of Americans are still kind of on the fence, was it fraudulent or not? But at the point it becomes inescapable that the last election was in fact stolen, then the entire federal government becomes delegitimized, and that's something people are going to be thinking about a lot when they're filling out those tax forms in May. Okay, Wayne Dupree is sounding the warning that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris believe they can alleviate poverty by throwing trillions of dollars at the American Rescue Plan. But what they're going to do is they're going to ease poverty by 40%, but only for 1 year, and then all those new tax hikes are going to kick on in, and we're going to be turned into the new Venezuela. Harris and Biden are trying to hand out goodies to keep the votes coming toward the Democratic side. But again, this could definitely backfire on them. They may have hoisted with their own petard. Now, Lindsey Graham is accusing Joe Biden of playing the race card in Georgia. They are still fighting over that law that was passed recently to improve the integrity of elections in Georgia. And they're out there saying it's going to discriminate against illegal immigrants, which it should, by the way, and it's going to discriminate against black people, which is completely unproven. And they definitely want the election system geared to guarantee Democratic victories in perpetuity. And the Georgia NAACP has filed a lawsuit against the voting bill, claiming it violates the rights of minority groups. Now, interestingly enough, they're completely out of touch with reality, because there's been a recent poll reported by the Western Journalism Center that shows 70% of black voters support voter ID. Now think about that. 70% of the black population, which is being held up as being victimized by voter ID, they want voter ID because they, like the white voter, the red voter, the yellow voter, the peach, taupe, and mauve voter, they want to know that their vote actually counts for something. Now, getting on back to Justices See No Evil, Hear No Evil, and Speak No Evil, the United States Supreme Court has denied efforts to require former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to face a deposition under oath over her unsecured email setup when she served in the Obama administration. Judicial Watch has filed this lawsuit. They filed a Freedom of Information Act, and the Supreme Court basically said, no, can't see it. We don't see it, we don't hear it, and you can't make us nya, 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 nya. Ghislaine Maxwell, is in new legal trouble. The U.S. is expanding the sex crime case, and now they have the evidence showing that the British socialite and daughter of a known Israeli spy helped procure a fourth underage girl for Jeffrey Epstein to sexually abuse and then pass on to people he wanted to blackmail. The girl was 14 when the grooming began. So things are getting very nervous. And of course, the big question behind all that is, where are all the audio and videotapes that we know Epstein was making at his house in Miami, at his mansion in New York, and especially on that island down in the Caribbean? Andrew Cuomo is facing even more heat. There's been a 10th woman coming forward accusing Cuomo of sexual misconduct, saying that he kissed her on both cheeks aggressively and in a sexual manner. How do you kiss a cheek in a sexual manner? I'm not really sure. And I got to tell you, I don't know. I think maybe this woman is after her 15 minutes of fame here. So let's get into COVID-19. It's still out there. It is still a major problem. Officials with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment are investigating the death of a 68-year-old woman from Atchison County, according to a report from the Epoch Times. Now, Jeannie Evans received the first shot of a coronavirus vaccine at a facility in Jefferson County on the 23rd of March. She died the next day at the Stormont Vale Hospital in Topeka after experiencing an adverse reaction to the vaccine. And it's even mentioned in the obituary that this is what she died of. And let's see. Another one, anaphylactic reaction here. Now, interestingly enough, per the CDC, this is the CDC's own official numbers, there are nearly twice as many vaccine-related deaths so far this year than all the vaccine-related deaths this past decade. Now, that has to tell you how serious this problem is. And this next one is really a very, very sad story. It's tragic. It's from Daily Express in Great Britain. The number of women who are losing their unborn child after having the COVID vaccine has increased by 366% in just 6 weeks. And we have been hearing earlier reports of women who get the vaccine while pregnant, suffering miscarriages or stillbirths. And the vaccines currently are coming with a warning saying that if you're thinking about getting pregnant, wait at least 2 months after you get the shot, or wait until after you've had the child and then get the shot. But this has got to be a heartbreak for these women who are trying to bring a new life into the world, and they do what the government and the corporate media tells them. They get the little shot in the arm, and then they lose their child. It is a tragedy by any definition of the word. Story coming on out of Russia today. Again, the draft report from the joint World Health Organization and China study says it's extremely unlikely that COVID-19 originated from a laboratory leak. The preliminary findings are saying that the coronavirus was likely transmitted to humans by animals and did not come from a laboratory. Now, I know there's a real push to say it came from a Chinese laboratory as part of the bashing of China. Interesting that they do not look at the American laboratories. Okay, over at Scoopy Web, they're reporting on yet another study showing that the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine can lead to blood clotting. And German researchers found signs of antibodies that attack platelets in the blood connected to the shot. They've had 30 cases of blood clots linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. Up in Canada, they are halting AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for use for those under the age of 55. So there is a problem there as well. Now, AstraZeneca has decided they need to do something about all this bad news that is coming out about blood clots, and so they have sprung into action and renamed their COVID vaccine. It's now called Vaxzevria, and they figure that a name change is going to help people forget about all the negative news about blood clots and the rest of it. So they're not actually fixing the vaccines. They're merely rebranding, and they're going to start new ads and new public relations campaigns. That's how they solve these problems. Joe Biden is out there saying that states should pause the reopening efforts. State and local leaders should reimpose the mask mandates. I hope not. As of the 5th of April, the mask mandate here in Indiana is going to be over, and I, for one, am looking at taking all those face masks and packing them away, because 10 years from now, they're all going to be collectibles. People are going to be buying these off of eBay as a reminder of what happened here. Trump has responded to Dr. Fauci's claims that he gets credit for developing the vaccine in record time. Fauci came on out, said it was all his own doing, didn't mention Operation Warp Speed, and Trump has unloaded on him, saying, no, it wasn't Fauci, it was Trump's decision and Operation Warp Drive. Okay. Now, a lot of you have probably gotten these swab tests for COVID, either the PCR or the LFT swab test. It has now come on out through a Freedom of Information Act that these swabs are using ethylene oxide as a gathering agent, I guess. It's a mild adhesive, whatever. The problem with that is that ethylene oxide is a known carcinogen. It can cause cancer, which I don't know, maybe that's a way of generating more business for the medical industrial complex down the road. A story coming on out of global research called The Criminalization of Big Pharma mRNA Vaccine Deaths and Injuries. The European Union is now adopting a digital vaccine passport. I guess that means it will go on your smartphone, so you don't have to carry an extra card along with your passport and your driver's license and everything else. But they're out there saying there are serious potential consequences of the mRNA vaccine technology. And yeah, they're playing with literally the software of life. And the reason that we should be concerned is everybody's DNA is unique. This one-size-fits-all approach is going to have problems. Now, for a lot of people, it's probably going to work, but clearly from the numbers that are coming in, there are a lot of people who get an adverse reaction. It's kind of like trying to take some software for the Commodore 64 and running it on an Apple II. You're not going to get a good result. Now, Biden is getting ready to launch a vaccine passport nationwide. The Republicans are fighting it. They're saying it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's an invasion of our privacy, but we're getting into that papers, please minority. Meanwhile, Jen Psaki is trying to justify Joe Biden's traveling around because he has a private plane. Well, technically, it's not private. We, the American taxpayers, own that plane. And Jen Psaki went on saying that they're working on the vaccine passports with the private sector. So, let me get this straight. Democrats want American citizens to have a vaccine passport to travel within the United States, but not an ID to vote. Tell me, does this make any sense at all to any of you out there? Another story coming on out here. This is from Global Research. If you refuse to get vaccinated, you are going to be treated as an outcast. You're going to have to, if you don't have your little vaccine passport to show, you're not going to be allowed to shop in certain places, go to certain sports and entertainment venues. And by the way, to nobody's surprise, there is already a huge black market industry cranking up to make counterfeit versions of all of these documents for people who just don't want that shot. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. We're okay now. Okay. Welcome to live radio, people. Anyways, I was about to say here, once again, we're holding out our little tin cup to try and ask you for your continued support of Republic Broadcasting Network and the work that we're doing to keep the American public fully informed so that they can make good choices. And once again, the postal address where you can send a check or money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, if you mail in a donation of $100 or more, you get your choice of either an RBN t-shirt, please include your t-shirt size and a return address, or an official RBN coffee mug, and again, include your return address. And don't forget that Frontside Firearms deal is still going on. All right, we're talking about the COVID-19, and they're still out there pushing the, let's see, okay, interestingly enough, somebody just called in and said that the ethylene oxide is a gas at room temperature, but we don't know if it's maybe, bonded to, I'll look into that. Anyway, we're back to this thing about they're pushing the vaccines as hard as they can. Joe Scarborough came on out with the claim that those who are opposed to vaccine passports are idiots, okay? Then he says they're not following Jesus. Now, I don't claim to be the best religious scholar in the world. I don't think Jesus had passports of any kind. FEMA, meanwhile, is going to offer up to $9,000 in financial relief for COVID-19 related funeral expenses. And they're saying, about 500,000 people have died due to COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic. FEMA is working to help ease some of the financial stress and offer to pay for the funerals, interment, cremation, costs associated with markers and headstones, clergy services, and so forth and so on. Well, that's nice of them to do. I have to concede that here. Let's talk about the international news now. The Pentagon is facing major costly lawsuits if the United States pulls out of Afghanistan. Now, since February 29th of last year, the U.S. has had a peace deal in place and promised they were going to withdraw from Afghanistan on May the 1st. The U.S. military was always averse to that. Now we understand why. Because they've been basing their procurement and services contracts on the idea the withdrawal was not going to happen. And if the withdrawal goes ahead, then various penalty clauses of these contracts are going to come on in, and the Pentagon is going to lose a lot of money. Now, I don't know why these contracts weren't written with a peace clause in there. If peace breaks out, then, all bets are off. But again, it's all about the Benjamins, and they don't care how many more people have to die as long as the contracts are satisfied and they don't have to pay any more money. Saudi Arabia has announced an initiative to end the Yemen war and implement a nationwide ceasefire. Now, this move was met with rejection by the Ansar Allah group, the Houthis, who seem to be actually having the upper hand in Yemen. Mohammed bin Salman has lost this war, and it is really time to call it off. And I would agree with that. According to a report from Politico, the Biden administration is preparing to offer a new proposal to Iran on a way to possibly revive the nuclear deal, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Politico, citing people familiar with the matter, said the proposal could be put forward as early as this week. And the proposal will ask Iran to halt some nuclear activities, such as new advanced centrifuges and the enrichment of uranium at 20%, in exchange for relief from U.S. sanctions. Now, Iran has come back and said that they will stop the 20% enrichment only if the U.S. bans are lifted. So we're back to this situation where Iran and the United States are saying to each other, you go first. You lift the sanctions, then we'll cut the enrichment. And the U.S. is saying, no, you stop the enrichment, then somewhere down the road we'll lift the sanctions. And Iran has certainly cause to be cautious, because when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action first went in, the United States was supposed to lift sanctions that were on Iran. Never happened, and in fact, they added new ones, courtesy of the U.S. Congress. Okay, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the international news, and a great deal of, shall we say, interest surrounds the landmark Iran-China deal, and it is seen as boosting an anti-U.S. stance both in China and the Middle East. This 25-year cooperation agreement signed by Iran and China reinforces both countries' stance against the United States' economic blackmail and shores of security in the region. Now, this is not a full alliance. It's an economic package mostly, but it is enough to undermine the U.S. sanctions and basically shake up the global status quo. How dare they do that? Okay, a Canada-based author and commentator has attributed the recent shutdown of Press TV's Facebook page to pressure exerted on Facebook by the pro-Israel lobby and others in Washington to suppress the pro-Palestinian positions. And again, look at the most protected secret, and that's what they're trying to keep under wraps right now, especially with that ICC investigation coming up. Over in Iraq, the officials are ready to push for the U.S. troops to leave the country. Now, in January of last year, Iraq's parliament unanimously called for the United States to leave Iraq. President Biden hasn't weighed in on this, but it's likely to come to a head in April talks with Iraq, centering on the strategic future of the two nations. The Iraqis do not want us to be there, and frankly, I don't want us to be there either. It's a huge amount of money. It's certainly a risk to the life and limb of our young people in uniform, and that is a bad thing. Over in Myanmar, there are thousands fleeing the airstrikes, which are complicating the issue. The series of airstrikes by the military and Thai officials denied that as the insecurity of the border added a new dimension to an already volatile crisis set off by the coup in Myanmar. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Over in Ukraine, the United States has told Ukraine that Biden seeks to revitalize ties to support Zelensky. And this is the puppet ruler that has inherited the junta installed by the United States all that way back. So they're starting to talk tough about Ukraine, and that is followed up by another story. This one came from Investment Watch blog. We are seeing on several Russian media sites the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine announcing preparations for a full-scale offensive. Now, they're being cagey about which way they're going to offend. Some are saying it could be Crimea. Others are saying they're going to uncork on the Donbass yet again. Over in Israel, as we reported yesterday, the elections are a deadlock. and Netanyahu is struggling to try and form a new coalition government to avoid a fifth election. One of the rising figures in Israeli politics is Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is described as the Israeli equivalent of a Ku Klux Klan leader, and he's been compared to the head of the Proud Boys. And he's virulently anti-Palestinian. He has in the past been convicted of incitement and support for a designated terrorist organization, and now he is implanted within the government. Earlier this month, Palestinians in the occupied West Bank's South Hebron Hills made headlines after a video was published of Israeli soldiers arresting 5 young Palestinian children, all between the ages of 8 and 13. The video showed a large group of armed soldiers detaining the frightened children, was filmed by a field researcher with Israeli human rights group B'Tselem, and went viral on social media. The individual who shot that now says that Shin Bet is threatening him. The former chief of IDF intelligence is alarmed by inclusion of intelligence sharing in the Iran-China pact. Now, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif characterized the 25-year partnership agreement as an historic pact which provides a strategic roadmap for relations between the two countries. Now, Israel is concerned by the pact's military cooperation, basically because it means that if Israel and the United States attack Iran, they're going to be taking on China as well. All right. A little bit of news here. There is a new poll out. This is being reported in the original antiwar.com, and it shows that the majority of Americans are now saying that aid to Israel should be cut because it is an apartheid state. And a lot of people are pointing back to President Jimmy Carter's 2006 bestseller, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid, and saying that Israel has not really learned its lesson. They are not moving into the 21st century. They're still behaving like a Bronze Age tribal kingdom, really, is what they are. And most Americans are now saying cut aid to Israel because of the apartheid. I think we should cut aid to Israel anyway. It's not like they need the money. They're very wealthy. They're supported by private donors all over the world. They just like to have the money is basically what it is. I've often wondered if the Ferengi are one of the lost tribes of Israel. Remember Jonathan Pollard spied for Israel, gave them America's nuclear combat secrets, which Israel turned around and traded to the Soviet Union. He spent 30 years in prison. He should have been shot. He was released, and he's back in Israel. He's being treated like a hero, and now he's gone public saying that young Jews in the United States of America must maintain their dual loyalty and that they should consider spying on behalf of Israel. So he's stabbed America in the back one more time. Okay. Now, Blinken is out there complaining about Chinese sanctions on U.S. officials, and this was a coordinated effort between the United States, United Kingdom, the European Union, and Canada. They sanctioned Chinese officials. Beijing has been responding with sanctions of its own, and Blinken basically is out there in a tizzy saying it's okay for us to sanction you, but not for you to sanction us, because that's just the way the world is. Here's an interesting little story, and it's quite revealing, again, from antiwar.com. They're quoting a report from CNN, which says the U.S. military is preparing for classified war games it will hold this summer. Now, while the enemies will have fictional names, the exercise is designed to simulate a global conflict with China and Russia, which tells you that is really what they're thinking is likely to happen. Now, I remember just before the second Iraq war cranked up, they had a war game as well, and the Iraq side won. because the first thing they did was they cut off all their electronic communications, which could be intercepted, and they went back to some old-fashioned means of, first of all, pre-planning things, contingency plans, and they were able to defeat the forces. So we'll see what happens out of this classified war game. Of course, if it's classified, they'll never tell us if, in fact, the United States loses these encounters, but it gives you an insight into what they're really thinking. We are truly heading to a new world war, and it is inevitable that if there is a war between the United States and China/Russia, it's going to go nuclear. Because as soon as either side realizes they cannot win conventionally, that's when they're going to start turning those little brass keys in the submarines and the silos. This is a little weird, and I think it betrays another fear that is inside the deep state. The FBI is deploying what they call sentiment analysis tools. They're going to screen the National Guard for pro-Trump sympathies. And it tells us that they're very concerned that there may be National Guard who are sympathetic to Donald Trump, who are aware the election was stolen, are disgusted with the direction that Biden and Harris are taking this country in, and that in the event of a conflict in the streets of America, that we might see a sizable portion of the National Guard side with Donald Trump. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the economic news here. This article came on out of Global Research up in Canada, and it talks about the early start of the world financial crisis called the Great Depression, and how it actually started with the collapse of a relatively small Austrian bank, and then the dominoes fell from that. And just went around the world and led to the Depression in the United States, which was exacerbated by American financial institutions to make a quick buck. But this article is asking if there is a real estate collapse in China, could it trigger another global financial meltdown? And it's certainly possible. The entire global financial system is held together with duct tape and baling wire at this point. And it's one of the reasons I'm opposed to globalism. We saw that all the way back in 2008 with the mortgage-backed security fraud collapse. And it was the linkages between American and European banks that dragged the European banks down with the American banks. National borders are a good thing, and we should make sure they're back up there. It's not just about keeping out foreign armies, it's about containing disasters. National borders serve the same function as fireproof doors in a building or watertight hatches in a ship. They contain disasters so that one accident doesn't destroy the entire system. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog speculating that robots could replace hundreds of thousands of oil and gas jobs by 2030. And, you know, I'm kind of in a torn position here. I think robots are cool. I think Boston Dynamics has done some really amazing work. They are out with a new robot that is designed to work in a warehouse. And I'm sure that Amazon is already saying, let's get a bunch of those, and that will end all talk of a union over there. But that's exactly the problem. If robots are replacing workers, then where are the workers going to get the money to go into the shopping malls and buy the products that the robots are making? And it's another example of the short-sightedness of the financial system that we have in this country. Asset managers have decided that inflation is now the #1 market risk, even worse than problems caused by COVID-19. Now, Ray Dalio is the founder of one of the largest investment firms in the world. He's got a personal fortune nearing $20 billion from his business and investment acumen. I hope he donates some to Republic Broadcasting. And he published an article recently saying that it's time to diversify out of the U.S. dollar. And he says a big part of it is interest rates are now so low that investing in bonds and most financial assets has become, in his words, stupid. Go into metals here. Another story, this one coming out of Blabberbuzz, saying that it looks like Joe Biden wants to bankrupt America by getting American citizens used to free cash. Now, there's no such thing as free cash. I mean, they can create it out of thin air all they want, but the only way they prevent the hyperinflation, they have to get cash back from somewhere else. So Biden is trying to buy Democratic votes by taking money from, for example, Republicans and showering it all over Democratic voters, all under the name of the so-called America Rescue Plan. GameStop has bounced back from some of the game playing that was going on with their stock, but according to another article, again from Investment Watch blog, it will collapse eventually. Another article from Investment Watch blog, inflation happens when people see it is cheaper to buy today than tomorrow, and that is certainly true. When you're seeing prices go on up on certain things, better get them now, because if you wait a month or 2 months or 3 months, it's going to cost a lot more. And if it's something you really need or want, better now than somewhere down the road. Now, the Suez Canal has been reopened. There's a backlog of over 400 ships still waiting to get through. And so even though the canal is reopened, we're still going to see some major disruption to the supply chains around the world. Over at Visa, they are getting ready to allow the use of cryptocurrency US dollar coins to settle transactions on the payment network. Now, Visa told Reuters it had launched a pilot program with payment and crypto platform Crypto.com and plans to offer the option to more partners later this year. So the cryptos are on the march again. Let's talk about immigration and globalism here. And a story coming on out of Blabberbuzz. Senator John Kennedy said on Sunday that he thinks the flood of illegal immigrants to the U.S. southern border can be controlled. All the Biden administration has to do is go back to what Donald Trump was doing. All you have to do is talk to the Border Patrol members. They'll tell you straight up. All you need to do is to go back to what they were doing before Biden came on in and just opened up the border, and worse, literally extended an invitation to illegal immigrants and refugees with the promise of all the free stuff they were going to get at your expense. Now, Joe Biden's border agencies are preparing reception centers to help an inflow of 800,000 family migrants this year. So Biden wants them here. He wants them here to drive down wages and salaries. He wants them here to vote Democratic. And he wants them here because, hey, they're not white. U.S. Representative Henry Schuler, I think it's pronounced, said that thousands of migrants are being released into Texas on an honor system without court information or notices to appear. And Representative Schuler told Border Report on Sunday that more than 2,000 migrants had been released into South Texas without any court papers. They don't have a court date. They don't have to show up. They're just in the country and ready to vote Democratic. This story really angered me, and it came out of informationliberation.com. Up in Washington State, there's this foster home for struggling youth, and it's been ordered to be vacated to make room for migrant children who are coming over the border in record numbers. But what about these American children who are struggling? What's going to happen to them? We have to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the show here, and we are talking about immigration. Now, over on Sirius XM's Breitbart News Sunday, Representative Mo Brooks basically came on out and said that Democrats want illegal immigration and amnesty to create a voter bloc that is totally dependent on welfare to win elections in perpetuity. Now, for some reason, the phrase bread and circuses is bouncing around inside my skull, but that's exactly what it is. Taking money away from Peter to pay Paul because Paul is going to vote for you. And to me, it is a sign that the United States is getting closer and closer to a Soviet Union-style collapse, which I think would be the best possible outcome for for a lot of people here. Mike Braun is out there saying exactly the same thing. The Democrats hope illegal aliens become voters through the open borders. Now, a quick little reminder that non-citizens are not supposed to vote in American elections. That's why we have voter ID laws, which are under constant, unrelenting attack by Democrats, as we're seeing down in Georgia right now, and as we saw all year long leading up to the 2016 election. Now, the story of this one is coming from Daily Mail. An influx of Russian, Syrian, and Iraqi immigrants are traveling to Mexico to cross into the United States of America, where overwhelmed detention centers are being forced to release them after just 3 days without vetting. These could be spies, they could be terrorists, they could be who knows what they are. Being sent in 3 days, they're released without any vetting. Nobody is checking the background of these people at all. And we know that quite a few criminals have gotten in. We know that quite a few sexual criminals have gotten on in. Known terrorists have gotten on in. And is this any way to run a country? I mean, this is really a very badly managed country right now. And here's one that ought to really make you angry if you are a parent dealing with the COVID lockdowns. Apparently, live human real teachers are going to be sent to the San Diego Convention Center to provide in-person learning for the illegal immigrants. Okay, but meanwhile in San Diego, the schools remain closed and the legal American citizens and their children are still having to do their learning remotely. And again, it does not look to me like a well-managed country at all. Out in California, I think we reported this one before. The Board of Education in California has approved a new curriculum that encourages a counter-genocide against whites. There was the story about the students were chanting to the Aztec god of human sacrifice. It's a little weird out there. Over in Virginia, there's a teachers group on Facebook, and police are now investigating because this group was naming parents who were critical of critical race theory and urging members to spy on them and gather information. So the police are investigating this so-called anti-racist Facebook group that named the parents of students who are against critical race theory. Okay, we got to take a break for station identification. We're going to go ahead and open the phone lines. Area code 512-248-8252, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. And I understand not a lot of people called in yesterday, probably won't call in today because of preparations for Easter. Passover is underway, spring break in a lot of different areas here. But we do have one caller waiting on the line, and that's Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, I want to correct your pronunciation of the representative's last name. His name is Henry Cuellar.
Cuellar.
C-U-E-L-L-A-R. Yeah, he's Spanish.
Okay.
Mexican-American.
Thank you.
He represents a district there along the border. I think he's been red-pilled.
Okay.
Over this whole thing. Look, this thing is really spinning out of control, and I think people don't really understand how disastrous this is going to be for the Biden administration. This is the worst handling of any domestic issue I have ever seen by any administration this soon.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
And they just seem to be absolutely incompetent. I can't think of one thing the Biden and Harris or anybody else in his administration has done that smacks of competence in anything, period. And if it's this bad now, you can imagine that it's only going to get worse because they're going to continue to try to sweep things under the rug,
yes,
lie to people, and then try to backtrack and blame it on somebody else whenever as it continues to blow up in their face.
Do you remember when you were back in high school and they had, they called them either the clique or the socias? It was all the rich kids, and they ganged together and they'd get away with all kinds of things and cover for each other. Well, take that group of individuals with that maturity or lack thereof, and put them at the top of the national government, and you've got a good simulator of what's going on right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the thing about it is that they're smug, and
Yes.
and they're smug.
They can't even get the smirk off their face.
No, they can't. But the more they dig in their heels, the worse this situation becomes. And look, it's not just domestic issues; it's just international issues as well. You saw what the Chinese delegation did to the Secretary of State and his underlings up there in Alaska.
Oh yeah,
that's just the beginning. And look, Putin, I guarantee you, Putin is laughing his rear end off.
Yes.
You got to think that Biden is absolutely a pathetic, demented old man. And he has to be scratching his head wondering, why is it that Americans allowed that man to be installed as president? He's got to know that Biden did not win that election.
I'm sure he's very well aware of that. Well, I think the problem is that most Americans still expect that at least some part of our government is going to do the job according to the Constitution, and it's only just now beginning to dawn on them that the entire system is completely corrupted and rotten to the core.
Oh yeah. Really, if you want to, if you want to listen how bad things really are, this is it. This is really it. Those people are so entrenched in government and in the bureaucracy that they will stop at nothing to try to maintain their grasp on power.
Well, that's why they're going after the guns.
Yeah, it won't work.
No.
It will not work. I think this is going to blow up on them again. I follow various websites and other commentators who are saying that these gun bills are DOA.
Yes.
In the Senate.
Well, unfortunately, the Democrats have got a majority, but they're tied in the Senate, but they have a Democratic vice president. And they certainly have the majority in the House of Representatives. And now we have Biden out there saying that he's going to sign executive orders to grab the guns, which, again, executive orders are only binding on the executive branch of government. They certainly have no force of law for ordinary American people. But I know how we can stop Joe Biden from grabbing our guns. We'll just tell them they're upstairs.
I've seen several cartoons about that.
Oh, okay.
Some time ago.
Here, I thought I was being clever.
No. Somebody else beat you to the punch. Some time ago, I said I would send you a ham radio technician license manual, and I've lost your address somewhere, so I'm going to send you an email to respond to that. And not only am I going to send you that, but I have several HTs, the handy talkies, which you use with your technician license.
Okay.
I'm going to put a very nice one in there. I have a good many, along with a bunch of HF units. But I'm going to put a nice one in there along with a good antenna and the charger.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and of course you can't transmit on that until you get
I get my license. Yes, I'm aware of that.
But you can receive.
Yes.
You can listen. But you can't transmit. But I'm sending it to you as an incentive to get your license.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, it probably will work.
Good. Anyway, I'll get that out to you. I'll send you that email. If you'll just respond to that email, I'll get that out to you in a day or so. And it's a very good. It's a very good HT. It's a Yaesu FT60.
Wow.
Very solid. Been around for a long time. I have a newer Yaesu FT3DR, which is a digital type radio.
Okay.
You can do both analog and digital on that. But Yaesu makes very solid ham radios, the HTs and HFs, and I mean, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with the Yaesu. But I've got that thing sitting up there on my desk, and I think, I'm not using it now. I'm using this other Yaesu, but it's a perfectly good HT. I need to either sell it or give it to somebody, so I think I'll just send it to you. Well,
thank you very much, and I really do appreciate it, and you're right. This will motivate me to get my technician's license.
I hope so. If you have any questions about studying for that thing, let me know. I've got lots of advice for you, but there are many resources out there, along with the manual, but there are many resources on the web to use a study for that, and I'll send you information on that.
Well,
soon.
thank you very much.
Okay, Mark, thanks for taking the call. Bye.
All right, you've got it. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the radio. And we're going to switch to Lauren in Ohio. Hello, Lauren. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was just going to say for the President Biden, he's not running anything.
No.
And neither is simple Kamala Harris. They're not incompetent. They're not the boss. And if we keep talking about it like it's supposed to be instead of talking about it like it is, we're going to keep losing. Okay? So
yes.
Who's running this? The Federal Reserve. Who is running this? What are they doing? It's fraud. Fraud negates consent.
Yes.
It's odious debt. It can be canceled. Their assets can be seized. These are criminals.
Yes.
We need to start looking at what is. We need to stop obeying illegitimate authority. If somebody doesn't have the right to tell you what to do, why are you obeying them? And if you just think about it, these are people telling you not to breathe. They're telling you to take an experimental vaccine into your body so you can get on a plane, so you can live your life. And the thing is, we're dumb enough to do it. That's how they evaluate whether or not you get to live or die. It really is survival of the wisest. If you don't have the sense to look at people who say they want to kill you and whose the democide over the last 100 years killed 200 million people.
Yes.
The governments are the most dangerous. So why are we trusting them to put things into our bodies that aren't even manufactured in America? And I wouldn't take it if it was manufactured here. From the backgrounds and the history of these people and their families, this isn't one generation of this stuff. Anthony Fauci's granddaddy was involved in the 1918 flu, or his daddy. That's what I mean. These are. It's like the Bushes, Prescott Bush, H.W., then W.
Yes.
It's just criminal after criminal. So why are we trusting them? Why do we continue to just respond to what they put out there?
Oh, because that television set tells us to. And we believe what the television tells us.
Well, and this is my point. We have all the power. Stop obeying illegitimate authority. Keep your money in your pocket. People, you have to stop paying those taxes. All the things they want to give away to all these people, the real assets they want to give come from the real people making them. We can trade among ourselves, make our own currency. We can make a labor currency, and it works just fine. All money is the stored fruit of your labor. If I'm a naturopathic doctor, I charge $100 an hour. But, if you're a shoemaker, you charge whatever, $30, whatever it is. And we trade amongst ourselves. We develop our own. Trump TV, I wish he'd do it. Mike Lindell's coming up with a social media thing.
Yes.
Well, I'm still not on it, but when I'll get on it. I don't understand why people are still on Twitter, still on Facebook, when they're screwing you and they're telling you can't talk and they're I'm going to give you a bad rap on the knuckles, whatever they call that. I don't know. I don't live in that world.
No, neither do I.
Well, so my point is we have all the power. All you have to do is turn off of those things. Go to gab.ai. I saw Andrew Torbo, that you've got plenty of patriots out there.
Yes.
The other thing is keep your children out of these schools. How did we get so mass indoctrinated that we're behaving the way we are? There's a full-on invasion, and people don't even, we want to be welcoming and, all this feel-good crap. That's what they did to your kids over the last 3 generations, 4 generations. So you basically have a bunch of, you ever heard that thing, if you're not a Democrat when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not a Republican when you're old, you have no brain.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Well, I was that girl. I voted for Bill Clinton. Everybody has a right to health care, and we have to. But I worked as a pharmaceutical rep, and I worked with doctors and hospitals and budgets, and you look and you say, now, wait a minute, you can't provide all these services for nothing. Somebody at some point has to actually put something into the kitty.
Yes.
There has to be a real thing to give away. And so they've trained us not to work. We send our children to school all day where they sit on their butts and learn lies, evolution, and Heather has 2 mommies and tranny story time and all this crap. And they don't know if they're a boy or a girl. Your health secretary, you don't know how your body works. You believe a bunch of lies instead of having them engaged in real life. This is the thing. Real life
Hello?
You know, the cow really has the baby. The corn really grows from the plant. You know, you see real life how it works. And so when they tell you something that's 180 degrees out of kilter, you know, literally up is down, wear a mask, don't breathe, because they say so, when oxygen is what kills pathogens. Don't get any sunlight. Bill Gates and Harvard are blocking the sun, you know, to prevent global warming. Except for, oops, you need sunshine to provide vitamin D, which is a hormone produced in your body that, by the way, shuts the door that COVID walks through on the ACE2 receptor
Yes.
right on your cell wall. So everything they're doing hurts us. Why do we keep obeying them? And this is my point. Please, stop paying money you don't owe. If you've not looked at hisadvocates.org, you know, please have him on for an interview. Talk to these people who are literally filing the contracts. All you're doing is canceling contracts.
Yes.
And I know this is true because I do it without any I didn't cancel anything. I just tell everybody at the time I'm speaking to them what's what. And there is no defense in their world for the truth. If it's the truth, it stands. Unless you have a truth that opposes it, you can't win it. You can't win jurisdiction over a man created by God. They respect that. They just know that most people perceive themselves as the children of the minor party. So when they tell you wear a mask or put your kids in school or take this shot or have a COVID passport, all the crazy stuff they're going to tell you to do. I mean, I don't know if you saw that movie, Angelina Jolie, and I'm not really a fan of hers, but the movie was excellent. And it was, first they killed my father, and it was about the Khmer Rouge. And I met
Yes.
a couple of these people when I was on a trip. And by golly, they told me they were 15 and 16 years old. They threw away their glasses. They lived in the fields. I mean, it was just god-awful. They were in America running restaurants. You know, they got brought over after the war. But it was horrible, and that's what they're doing here, and the people don't recognize it because there's no real history taught in these schools.
Not anymore,
It's all
no.
about-
They're erasing history as fast as they can.
And whose fault is that? Why are your children still in these schools? And I'm talking to the conservatives and the Christians and the people who say they're patriots. I get what you're used to. I understand how you want it to be. But you have to understand what is and respect the truth. Then you can pick that sword up and cut these people to pieces. It would take 30 days of us yanking our kids out of these schools, putting the truth in front of them instead of lies, and not giving the government our labor, our attention, or our obedience. That's it. What are they going to give away to these people? If we shun them, if we turn our backs, all these government workers, they got their paycheck through this whole thing. Teachers, no schools, but they got their paychecks. Meantime, all these 60% of small businesses, many of which are closed forever.
Yeah, they're gone. They are definitely gone.
Okay,
Lauren?
Those people.
Lauren?
Wait, real quick. Those people still have those skill sets. We could still turn this around. I'll let you go. I'm sorry. I don't
No. Don't hang up yet. Don't hang up yet. I just wanted to pass along a message from our control room to stay on the line because they want to talk to you about something, okay?
Okay.
All right. Meanwhile, we're going to switch over to Kevin in West Virginia. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Mike. I don't know if you've seen this or not about how hard they're pushing these vaccines. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about. But now, not only do you get your Krispy Kreme donut if you get a vaccine, you now get a lifetime membership, a VIP lifetime membership at strip clubs. This has reached Looney Tune level. It
Yes.
really has. It really has. And about with, I think her name was your last caller, talking about the television. I remember it like this, Tele-Live Vision. I mean, that's the cool thing about being blind. I don't have to watch this crap. I mean, it's some days I'm happy about it, some days I'm not, but a lot of the times I don't have to partake in this crap. I mean, it's about with Biden and, this is an illegitimate government.
Mm-hmm.
Like she said, don't obey this anymore. Everybody just stop paying attention to these people. Live your life how you want to live it, and if they say anything, ignore them and go on. I mean, I don't want to see violence, but, like a Soviet-style collapse, it was a little violent. I've never seen a peaceful revolution, ever, or read about it in history. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, those ham radio licenses.
Yeah.
Any of their manuals in Braille? Have you ever seen
I
a
would
Braille?
imagine probably that there is. I'm not aware of them for obvious reasons, but yeah.
I mean, again, that's another thing, everybody. They're probably going to start burning books, or like with this canceling this culture, with history. Coming from me, I think everybody should ought to pick up another way of learning, like Braille, because if they come and take it, at least they can't read it, but you can.
Book of Eli.
Thought. Yeah, exactly. That's just a thought for everybody. I mean, I'm not trying to push read Braille to people, but I would say that's another way to, if worst comes to worst, to send messages back and forth to one another. At least they can't read it, and we and everybody else could. Just thoughts out there. That's all. It's just, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, Mr. Mike. Look at the border situation. Our troops are over Afghanistan guarding poppy fields.
Yes,
when
we have the photos.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, was it Michael Hastings was going to blow that wide open and then he gets killed?
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't know, Mr. Mike. I want to give up, but at the same time, I don't want to give up. I don't know what to do. I don't know.
You keep educating people. That's all that you can do. Just, bit by bit, we chip away at the facade of the government until the American people see what its true nature is.
I mean, if they can't see it by now, if I can see this, how fake it is and how this fraudulent government and faux government, whatever you want to call it, if I can see this, I don't understand why anybody else can't. I don't understand how people can't see that this whole COVID-19, although, many different agendas, hey, it's all about putting a jab in your arm and making money. I mean, I think I had heard it went from $20 to now $150 some a shot now?
And it's going to go up to over 300.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. It's insane. I mean, I have to agree with your last caller. She's spot on.
Okay, Kevin, I got to let you go. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. Phone lines are open, 512-248-8252, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and before we go back to the phones, I got an email from somebody who's a radio ham himself who says there are plenty of blind people who are radio hams, and that therefore he concludes there are resources out there for blind people to get their licenses and get the more advanced licenses. It's just a case of tracking down those resources. All right, we're going to go back to the phones now to Daniel in North Dakota. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. So you guys were just talking about the ham radio.
Yes.
I think it'd be a really great idea to actually do a show on ham radios. There's a lot of information out there.
Okay.
And the guy that called earlier, he said that he could give you advice, and I think that would be really cool if he actually came on and gave that advice to everybody that was listening to the show.
I hear you.
I think it would be a valuable. Secondly, you guys were talking about the alternative social medias, and I know a bunch of people from RBN signed up at social1776.com.
Okay.
But I just wanted to know that over at Social 1776, we actually added our own YouTube type of profile. So if you guys go over there, you can now download videos, and we're building onto it. So it's pretty cool, the things that we're doing over there.
Well, it sounds like it, and I'm going to have to check it out. What's the name of it again?
Social1776.com. And the trick is when you sign up for an account over there, use lowercase letters. Again, I'll say that, lowercase letters to create your username.
Okay.
And that's the trick, basically, to make it easier for people to sign up. So... But, I just want to say thanks, Mike, again, for the show that you're doing over here. We love listening to you guys. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks. Good night.
All right, good night. We're going to switch over to Kelly in Austin, who's going to answer some of Kevin's questions. And, Kelly, I'm probably going to have to take you through to the next commercial break. So take it away.
Well, this won't take very long. There are many sight impaired or blind hams. In fact, they're called blind hams. the best way, I don't know of a Braille manual. I've never seen a Braille manual. But the best thing to do is to contact the American Radio Relay League, ARRL. It's either .com or .org. And they will be able to answer all of your questions. They'll be able to point you in the direction. They'll be able to point Kevin in the direction he needs to go to be able to find all the resources he needs to be able to study for a technician license or any other license.
Okay.
Rest assured, there are blind hams. They're here in Austin, Texas. There's my group, the Oak Hill group, meets every Thursday evening by radio, and there are a couple of blind hams in there. They've had their licenses for a long time. So I want to give Kevin a lot of encouragement and tell him to pursue that. But start off by contacting the American Radio Relay League, ARRL, and on the web it's either ARRL.org or .com. One of the two. Just to type that in, and you'll find all the help you need.
Well, in these uncertain times, I think everybody would be well advised to at least have a good shortwave radio in case the internet gets taken away from us. Certainly smaller two-way radios to stay in touch with your family if the cell phones go down, and definitely make the investment into getting a technician's license so you can go out on the amateur bands, which hopefully are going to be relatively free from interference by the government.
Well, the good thing about the HTs is that say the government tries to shut down the repeaters, you can still communicate by simplex, that is radio to radio,
yes,
by typing in a specific frequency. So they can't stop that. But then if you get a higher license, such as I have, a general license, or if you get the even higher one, the expert, amateur expert, you're getting onto frequencies that they can't control. So you can talk over long distances. They're not going to be able to mess with repeaters because you're going to go directly into, say, the 10 meters, 10 meter frequencies, or 12, 15, 17, 20, 40, or whatever else. And you can talk to people around the world without government interference. And that's why you want to upgrade your license. But you need to start off with the technician license.
Okay.
Technician license will get you started. You'll be able to communicate over very long distances, frankly, with an HT, depending upon the kind of repeater you're tapping into, especially if you have a digital repeater. And in many cases, if you get what's called digital mobile radio, DMR, and you have a radio that can handle that, a DMR radio, you can talk to people around the world with a technician license.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
It's a wonderful hobby, but it's something we all need to have for reasons other than just hobby. With this oppressive government, we need to be able to communicate with people.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Now, my own experience with radio, many years ago in college, I came out and I worked a summer at, KGRB, KBOB, simulcasting Golden Oldies, and to do that job, I had to get a third-class radio telephone license, so I've been through the process already to an extent. I'm not expecting to get a lot of problems with the technician license. Anyway, Kelly, stay on the line. We got to put you on hold. We'll be back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're finishing up with Kelly in Austin, who's been sharing a lot of really good information about ham radio. And, we talk a lot about prepping on this show, but I think for somebody who's a serious prepper that may be getting into a ham radio with a technician class license and a handheld radio might not be a bad idea.
Oh, yeah. If you're a serious prepper, you're going to have to get into radio somehow. Now, not everybody, say, in a family can have a ham, wants to study for a ham license, but you can also get very easily a GMRS license, which you don't have to take a test for.
True. I have a GMRS license.
And that's actually becoming more popular now, for people who don't want to take the time to study for a ham test. And it's good for families,
yes,
campers.
Yep.
And it's a good way. It's a good way to maintain contact, and you can maintain contact easily within a mile or two of each other, depending on what kind of GMRS repeater there might be in your area. So that's something else I recommend. But the ham radio really is starting off with the HT, the technician license. It's really the best place to start, and then go from there to your general license. And if you wanted to take the extra time, get the amateur expert. Now, somebody mentioned maybe having me or somebody else on your program to offer advice to people. I'd be glad to do that. And I know that any other ham licensee who listens to your program would be willing to do that too. We were always encouraging people to go for their ham licenses.
Well, Kelly, next week after the Easter Passover craziness is gone, I would love to have you back as a second-hour guest to really discuss this, because the more I'm hearing, the more it sounds like something that the American people need to have access to so they can maintain communication with each other during this crackdown on the internet and social media.
Oh, yeah. And look, it's not just for that, but, the ham radio operators play a big role in disaster.
Yes, they do.
In fact, local law enforcement agencies rely extensively on ham radio operators for communications. They need to know what are the conditions somewhere. And ham radio is the easiest way to get that out. I'd be willing to do that, and I'm sure any other ham radio licensee who listens to would be willing to do it too. Also, I'll send you my contact information, and I'll be willing to sit down with you for a half hour or an hour and then walk people through what you need to know.
All right. Well, that'll be really good. I'm already getting emails asking to pass along their address to you because they're already curious about it.
Okay. I'll send you all my contact information, and you can forward it to them as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the information and the radio and the manual, and we look forward to talking to you, more, especially as a formal guest on the show.
Okay, all right, we're looking forward to it. Thanks for taking the call.
You've got it, and let's go to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hey, well, let's not forget sat phones, too. I think that'll be a help also. Necessary, right?
Yes.
You don't think so? I don't know. By the way, it reminds me also about a movie. I'm sure you've seen it. Probably one of the best movies around in the last, decade or two. Book of Eli.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Oh, I remember it. Yes. That's why I mentioned it, to that other individual who was wondering if the technician's manual was available in Braille.
Oh, I didn't hear that part. But, yeah, because that's what they reminded me of. I mean, it was some surprise at the end when you found out that the Denzel Washington character was actually blind,
Yes.
From Braille. What an actor. That's one of the, four best actors, I believe, in the world today.
Yes.
Denzel. I mean, he's so good, he can play all these race-neutral. He plays so many race-neutral parts, too.
Yes.
Really that be played by any race, you know what I mean? I even saw the remake of the Magnificent Seven where he had the Yule Brenner part.
Yes.
Anybody could do it with him, and he did a good job. I thought he did a good job. That's I just want to say, what you were talking about China, the agreement they have with Iran.
Yes.
I was listening to a podcast today while I was driving. True News.
Yes.
I don't know if there's kind of a religious show, but they have a lot of good. They cover a lot of news, real news, true news,
Mm-hmm.
And they were covering this thing, and they kind of seemed to think that there might be something involved in this, where maybe China would either put, maybe you would lend or give some nukes to Iran to defend themselves against the possibility.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, that's the only chance Israel would have. Is against Iran in a war is their nukes. And if Iran has, let's say 4 or 5 nukes, which either Russia or China could easily give to them, and Iran has the missiles to.
Yes, they do.
They have the technology. They don't even have They don't even need the means of delivery. They have it. That's it. That would create a mad situation. Mutual destruction, and I think that would be it. I think Netanyahu, whoever else is in control in Israel, would shut their mouths, stop their nonsense, and that would be it. Because that would be the great equalizer. It's kind of like the reason for the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is there as a, as well as for self-defense. It's also there to warn the government. You want to go to war with the American people have the ability to fight back.
Yes, they do.
Same thing in an international front with nukes. when a country has nukes, that means they have the ability to. That's going to be a deterrent.
It's going to be, yeah. That's the reason to have, pardon me, either a gun or a nuclear weapon is a deterrent. You certainly hope you don't have to use it, but having one basically makes your neighbors much more well behaved.
Absolutely, and you would think, and as far as Ukraine goes, that's a reckless. They are really reckless.
Yes, they are.
Being encouraged. They push Russia too far. I'm not even talking about trying to take Crimea back. That would be impossible for them to do. Okay?
Yes.
But even moving against east, where they got their butts kicked twice earlier, and Putin put a restraining hand on the Ukrainian rebels who could have gone right into Kiev at the time. This time, if they try anything with eastern Ukraine, I think Russia's ready to really step in with both feet. Maybe even to the point of going right into Kiev. Now, what the United States would do, who knows? Probably nothing. But when you've got a demented old fool in there that basically doesn't even know what planet he's living on, who knows? Anything is possible. Unfortunately, it's a very dangerous world we're in today, Mike.
Yes,
the funny
it
thing
is.
we talk about the book of Eli.
Yes.
That was post-nuclear war
Yes.
world, if I remember right.
Yes.
No? So, I mean, and that's probably the kind, if there's humans living after something like that, it'd probably be in those kind of conditions,
Yeah, very much so.
Very likely, So,
Well, just study the post-World War I and World War II histories of Europe, because it did take them a long while to rebuild their civilization. And, right when the war was over, conditions were very, very bad.
They were bad, but it wouldn't be as bad as if you had thousands of nukes hitting one area after another in the world.
Yes.
I mean, that would be devastating. And you look at the radiation, the nuclear winter, and all the other things that would go with it, wouldn't be very pretty.
Nope.
Sure. At least back in the 60s and 70s, people understood this. They don't seem to understand it now.
No, they don't. Well, we're too far removed from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Atom bombs are something you see in movies. And, so there's a certain abstraction to the idea of a mushroom cloud, and they don't really have a gut awareness of just how powerful and destructive these weapons can be.
I think another thing is, too, back then, you had most of your congressmen and senators and even presidents were usually World War II veterans.
Yes.
JFK is a prime example. And they understood, they understood very well what a nuclear war would be like.
Yes.
You don't have this anymore.
No, we don't.
Most of you people in Congress, Senate are not veterans, and even the ones that are don't seem to realize it. And these madmen in the CIA have way too much to say, and they don't seem to understand, or they don't want to understand what a nuclear war could be like. We should be, and as far as, by the way, Putin laughing, I disagree with Kelly on this. He said Putin's laughing about Biden. I don't think he's laughing at all. I think Putin is a statesman. He's also very, very intelligent. Probably the smartest leader in the world today, probably the greatest statesman in the world. He understands what it is to have a nuclear power like the United States in this kind of a situation.
Yes.
Where we're basically rudderless. Okay? He can't be happy over this. We would, just like we wouldn't be anybody in their right mind wouldn't be happy if this was going on in Russia.
Yes.
Okay? It's a very dangerous situation, and I'm sure
agree.
he realizes it. I'm sure he's got to be he's on this thing I'm sure he's monitoring our missiles very closely, and
well, that may be a little bit hard because apparently the Open Skies Treaty has kind of gone away, and that means that the U.S. and also Russia and China can start developing more nuclear arms safe from being spied on from above, except, of course, by the satellites.
There's also something else very interesting on True News today. They said the Russians, I think, like 3 or 4 Russian nuclear submarines, armed submarines, appeared in a certain place around the North Pole.
Yes.
we had no clue that they were even there, and they have their missiles pointed at the United States. It was they believe it was Putin's way of saying, hey, don't push us too far. We're out. You don't even know we were there. So that's how dangerous this is. But whether a demented old fool like Biden understands this, or a complete idiot like Kamala Harris.
Well, they've got their bomb shelters. They've got Cheyenne Mountain. They've got the bunkers underneath the Washington, D.C. It's just the rest of us who are going to get vaporized.
Let's not forget Denver Airport, too,
yes.
where the billionaires are probably too. That's why the American people patriots got to be prepared. If they do something like this, if they get us before the nukes go off, we got to be prepared to make sure they don't get into those bunkers and the patriots get into the bunkers.
Oh, I disagree.
Right?
I disagree. I think we should let them get into the bunkers and then cement over the hatches.
Yeah, but wouldn't you want real patriots, real people who love this country and aren't warmongers and stuff? Wouldn't you want them to survive something like that?
Well, I would like them to survive something like that, but I'm talking about the politicians and the those who are in favor of a nuclear war because, they've got their bunkers. Let them go into the bunkers and then cement over the hatch.
Oh, you got a point there, too.
Yeah.
You do got a point. All right, Mike. I'll let you go, buddy. Take it easy, okay?
All right. Thanks an awful lot.
Have a happy Easter. Okay? Bye.
All right, we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. Hey, do you happen to listen to John Stadtmiller's show after you're done? I know you're probably tired and have things to do. I'm just wondering if you caught yesterday's program at all.
No, I did not, and I won't catch it tonight because tonight is Claire's bell choir rehearsal, and I've been drafted to ring some bells.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to hold you against it, but I'm just mentioning it because I brought up this topic last night just to see if you had any background on it.
Yes.
And this is a hidden facet, a hidden cost of the COVID-19 vaccine that's produced by U.S. pharmaceutical companies, and that's the ocean's ecosystem is being destroyed by the harvesting of horseshoe crabs.
Yes.
To create you're familiar with that?
I'm familiar with that, and I'm also familiar with the fact that all of this, these used masks are just being tossed into the environment, and wildlife is getting tangled up in it, and it's a huge, ugly disaster.
It's a terrible disaster. I'm looking at a big article, and it's very concise by National Geographic, and so I'm going to have to just bear with me. Just pick out the points here. There's a chemical that they draw out of the animal's blood. It's a copper-based blood in the horseshoe crab. So it creates they can withdraw a chemical that they call lysate.
Yes. Which
they use to detect a contaminant called endotoxin. I'm familiar with endotoxin that occurs everywhere, even in feed. And they round up 500,000 Atlantic horseshoe crabs a year, and this is several years ago. It bleed them in a gross-looking, almost like a factory farm type setting where they set them up and they stick a needle into the main artery going into their heart, withdraw a certain amount of blood, and then put them back in the ocean. And the company's doing this claim that only 10% or so died. Well, actually, the number is more like 60%.
Okay.
In 1990, biologists estimated 1.24 million crabs spawned in Delaware Bay, which is a main egg-laying spot and prime collection point for the companies. By 2002, that number has dropped to 33,500. Okay, and there are migrating birds, one of which, or more than one of which, travel 6,000 miles from the Arctic to Chile every year in their migration, and that's where they load up on horseshoe crab eggs in order to make that journey. So they're suffering. Their sea life feeds on horseshoe crab eggs. And the thing is this, first of all, this carnage for a disease that's we don't even know if it's really any more serious than the common flu.
I don't think it is.
The death rate so low.
I think it is the flu. They just renamed it to make it scary. The way that AstraZeneca's just renamed their vaccine to make it less scary.
Right. Or it could be another variant of the flu. When they test for it, they collect regular flu with that, and they say, oh, this is COVID. But anyhow. Getting back to the horseshoe crab thing, the thing is, several years ago, the European labs developed a synthetic alternative for it. That's what the Sputnik. I'm sure that the Sputnik vaccine uses it.
Bruce, I'm sorry to cut you off. I got to let you go here. We're going to take a commercial break. We have callers waiting on the line, and we've got one more segment of the show to do. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today, and we're going to go to Bob in North Carolina. Hello, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind? A couple things. I am not a troll. Please don't hang up on me, but I do have to push back a little bit here. I think one of the reasons why you don't have a lot of callers is you've lost credibility. Just like the last segment, you're talking to the caller, and you said, I just think it's kind of like a flu, but yet you went ahead and took the vaccine. You're reading stories about how bad the vaccine is, the problem with the vaccine, and then you're the one who took the vaccine. Okay. So
well, Bob, thank you for your opinion, and we've got time for one more call. James in Vancouver. Hello, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
It's true that we don't have Robert Burns Woodward around. He could synthesize that limulus amoebocyte lysate, but ethylene oxide, that's a carcinogen.
Yes.
It's a mutagen.
Yes.
And as soon as it's got that nasty oxide ring in there, and as soon as that hits something slightly basic, it'll open up, and that'll be the DNA's worst nightmare. And there's, am I right, they're sticking this up people's noses?
Essentially, that's what the news story said.
And it's going right to the membrane between the brain and whatnot?
Well, I don't know if it can cross the blood-brain barrier or not. But obviously, we do need to look into, what exactly is in that swab they're shoving up your nose. Just the fact that there's a known carcinogen in there, I think, is cause for alarm.
Yeah, that's the simplest epoxide, and epoxide.
Yes.
It's not stuff you want to, you don't want to take a bath in that, like my professor would say. So anyway, that's my my comment for today.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we're going to let you go here, and we got a couple more minutes here. So let's get into another story. Apparently, Alabama is now joining 20 other states in crafting laws to protect children from transgender drug treatment. That's 20 states. It's almost half the country right now that wants to protect children from the transgender movement that claims biological sex is assigned at birth, and children are capable of deciding what sex they want to be and undergo procedures to change their sex. Now, the Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act would make it a felony to provide life-altering drug treatment or surgery to minors, and I'm absolutely in support of this. Now, advocates for so-called transgender youth argue that helping gender-confused children is harmful, including National Public Radio, which interviewed a 17-year-old girl who's living as a boy on its Monday morning edition on Sunday. So, again, I consider this child abuse. These kids are not old enough to really know what their sexuality is. They're young, they're impressionable, they're confused. They're literally proselytizing this transgender agenda inside the school system, along with Drag Queen Story Hour and all the rest. Okay, we're coming up here on the end of the program. The music is going to be starting any second, so stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.